Hello class, this is an instructional video about signal phrases and parenthetical citations. So I am going to go through this PowerPoint with you, and hopefully a lot of this will be review. So first, let's kind of dissect what the different components are. I have a sentence here that says, in his autobiography entitled I Am Everything, the controversial artist laments, quote, my greatest pain in life is that I will never be able to see myself perform live, end quote. And then I have the citation West 59. Okay, so let's take this thing apart. This whole first pinkish purple part that's right here, this and the blue, this is your signal phrase. Okay, a signal phrase introduces words or ideas that are not yours. Okay, in blue, I've highlighted the signal verb. So choosing the signal verb is very important because it expresses the attitude of not only the speaker, but it can also express the attitude of you, the writer. Okay, then in green, I have the actual quote that I'm using. And then in orange, I have my MLA parenthetical citation. These are also called in-text citations, where I list the author's last name, West, and then the page number that I found the quote, 59. Notice that my period is on the outside of the parenthetical citation. Okay, another way you can do this, if I want to name the author in my signal phrase, I can do that as well. Okay, this is what I did here. In his autobiography entitled I Am Everything, the controversial artist Kanye West laments. Okay, if you name the author in the signal phrase, you do not have to name the author again in the parenthetical citation. So that's why I only have 59 in my parenthetical citation. Okay, because I've already told the reader who said it in my signal phrase. All right, so what exactly are these signal phrases? Well, they do a couple of things. First thing they do, like I said, they introduce borrowed information. They also give qualifications of the source. So as you can see, I called him the controversial artist. I went ahead and told the reader something about the person instead of just giving his name. Okay? The next thing they do, you need to introduce the any quotation or paraphrase or summary from an outside source. You should introduce it with a signal phrase because you want the reader to know that these are not your words, but that they are someone else's or their ideas. Okay, signal phrases can appear at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end of the borrowed material. A lot of times they're set off with commas, depending on their location in the sentence. And last, but definitely not least, they are always followed by a parenthetical citation. All right, so I'm going to give you some examples. Some more Kanye West. I have no idea why I used him as my example, but I did. Okay, so the blue is the signal phrase. Notice in the first example, it's at the beginning. Okay, I still have my parenthetical citation at the end though. In this example, it's in the middle. And in the last example, it is at the end. All right. Let's keep moving. All right, let's talk about signal verbs. As I said, they're really important. They reflect the attitude of both the author of the source that you're using and your personal attitude. Really, really important thing you need to remember is MLA always wants your signal verbs to be in the present tense. Okay, so we're going to stay in present tense when we are integrating evidence or research. All right, so I included a list of some signal verbs in this PowerPoint. There's a complete list of them on page 196 of your textbook, Research Matters, so you can always consult that as well. Okay, the first one, these words are neutral, which means they're not biased one way or the other. The second column, these are signal verbs that you would use if you were writing an argumentative piece. All right, the third column, those are words that have to do with disagreement. That's the tone that you would be conveying to the reader is disagreement. And then the last one is agreement. And like I said, there's lots of other ones on page 196. All right, here's some examples of signal phrases. All right, now we're talking about Tina Fey. Tina Fey states in an interview that, okay, notice that one's at the beginning. This one's in the middle, remarks Tina Fey. This one, you can tell this is argumentative, claims comedian Tina Fey. And this one, pretty neutral, offers an intriguing argument for this view. All right, all those are signal phrases. Although they're different and they're located in different places, they all do the same thing. They signal to the reader that these are words or ideas that do not belong to you, the writer. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Now we're going to get into more detail about parenthetical citations. These are also called in-text citations. So you can use those terms, either term that you want. Okay, they mean the exact same thing. All right, so these citations indicate the source of the direct quotation or the paraphrase or the summary. All right, so they basically point the reader to where the information from where it came. All right, they appear inside parentheses at the end of the barred material. They include the source's author's last name and page number, unless the author's name has already been used in the signal phrase. I talked about that at the beginning of this video. If there is no author, then they use the article title inside quotation marks and the page number. All right. When you are using your parenthetical citations, you place a period after the last parenthesis to indicate the end of the sentence. The exception to this punctuation placement is the longer block indented quotation in which the period is placed before the parentheses. And I'm going to show you that at the very end of this video. All right, so here's some citation examples. This is for a source with an author and a page number. According to data from 2008, quote, Facebook has surpassed MySpace as the largest social networking site with nearly 500 million members, or 22% of all internet users. Okay, parenthetical citation, author's last name, page number. Notice in MLA we don't put a comma or any other type of punctuation inside our parenthetical citation, and our period is at the end. We did not put a period here because the end of our sentence is after the parenthetical citation. So that's why the period comes there. Now, let's pretend that you named the author inside the signal phrase. John Rosen, pop culture commentator, reports. Then I have my quote. And because I named John Rosen right here, I do not have to repeat his last name in the parenthetical citation, which is why I only use the page number. All right, let's keep going. Here is a source with no page number. So, you know, a lot of times we're going to be working with online sources that don't have page numbers. When you integrate one of those sources, you are only going to have the author's last name. Okay, that's why I have Kozel in parentheses there. All right, on the next example, I have a source that doesn't have an author. Okay, so I am going to use an abbreviated version of the title. Okay, you don't want to put the full title of this source is Inequality in Public Schools. That is too long to put in a parenthetical citation, so I am only going to choose the first word, inequality. I'm going to keep my quotation marks, and then I put the page number. That way, when my reader is reading my paper and sees inequality, the reader can go to the works cited page and look for an entry that begins with the word inequality. Okay, all these should always match whatever's on the works cited page. All right, then my last example is of a long quotation. This is what I was telling you about. Okay, when you have a long quotation, first of all, a long quotation is defined as anything from a source that is longer than 4 typed lines. If you're typing away, or you cut and pasted something from a source and it's more than 4 typed lines, then you're going to put it in this format. All right, so we have our signal phrase. First rule is signal phrase is followed by a colon. Faye offers professional advice from a humorous perspective, colon. All right, then the next rule is, in a long quotation, that it starts on a new line and is indented 1/2 inch. So this is Tina Fey's quote. I started on a new line and I indent it. See, I indent it 1/2 inch. Third rule, there are no quotation marks. Do not use quotation marks in a long quotation. The fact that it's set off 1/2 inch in block style lets the reader know that it's a quotation. You don't need the marks. And then lastly, the period comes before the parentheses instead of after. Normally, my period would come after my parenthetical citation, but in a long quotation, it comes before. So like I said, MLA can be very tedious, but it's all about just looking at your handbook, looking at the rules, or even rewatching this video. All right, I will see you guys online. Please email me with any questions or concerns.